Hi everyone, welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Well, this is our 400th GoldFish Report, and we've waited a long time to bring a very special report, and I'm so privileged and honored to have a special guest with us today. Alex Collier is with us today. Alex, thank you so much for being here. I'm so honored for you to be here, and we're going to be talking about space, the Andromeda Council, and all things pertaining to space. So welcome to the GoldFish Report.
Thank you, Louisa. Thank you, Stephen. It's an honor and a privilege to be here.
And of course, joining me today is my co-host, Steve, who wouldn't miss this for anything in the world. Steve, thanks for being here with me.
That's right. Yeah, very excited to have Alex here. I've been following him for years, and he's a man of what I've seen of integrity, as is his message. And it's a great honor to have him here today on the 400th.
On the 400th, and this is important. And we're going to start this out with a slideshow a little bit. I'm going to try to take this through the slideshow. And one of the things that I think is important is that we understand where we are with regard to space and space policy. So here, this is a photo. I have a photo of you up here, Alex, from one of your other presentations. And okay, so a few years ago, what I'm showing right now, I'm screen sharing a screenshot from the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. This happens to be located in Vienna, Steve, right where you are. This office is, and I'm just going to read this very briefly, is the United Nations office responsible for promoting international cooperation in the peaceful use of outer space. And so this is an office that was established several years ago, and it's very interesting. I'm just going to leave this here so you can take note. I want our viewers to know that you should definitely do more research on this on your own. Go into the resources I'm providing for you so you can look into it a little bit more. So I thought that this was very curious. Then, as most of our viewers know, I was in graduate school for public policy, and that's a story in and of itself I'm not going to get into, of course. But one of the research papers I did a summary. It was like a very short policy analysis, literature review. And here, lo and behold, we actually have laws in the United States regarding space exploration, space utilization, and asteroid mining, and all the such, everything related to that. And this was written in 2016. So what we have is a bill called, which is a law now, it was HR 1508, and this was pertaining to mining asteroids in space. So this is huge because we've never even admitted to this yet, Alex. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and it is. And in my last couple of webinars, I've talked about the new moons that have been brought in to our solar system for exactly that purpose.
Wow.
Whoa, okay, whoa, we're going to get to that. Okay, write that down, new moons. okay, hold on. So calm down. So here we go. So this was part of a larger bill called 2262. So I'm going to go, of course, the sponsor of the bill was Representative Bill Posey of Florida, and he is in charge of, I guess you would say, NASA's, any kind of space legislation. So he's the sponsor of the bill. I did contact his office, and I had personal communication in terms of getting this information. We're going to just take a look. So here it is. This is HR 1508, Space Resource Exploration and Utilization Act. So folks, we're exploring space. We didn't even have the Space Force yet. We didn't have this Space Force that the president commissioned until this year. So this is quite interesting, okay? Just keep a note of that. Here it just tells you that this is to facilitate commercial exploration and utilization of space resources to meet national needs, to discourage government barriers to the development of economically viable, safe, and stable industries for the exploration and utilization of space resources in manners consistent with the existing international obligation of the United States, and to promote the right of the U.S. commercial entities to explore outer space and utilize space resources in accordance with such obligations, free from harmful interference, and to transfer or sell such resources. So you can look this up yourself, look at all the details. This is part of a bigger bill, which is this one here called HR 2262, U.S. Space U.S. Commercial Space Launch Competitiveness Act. And this refers to, the summary is very long. I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to just tell you that this has to do with private aerospace competitiveness and entrepreneurship. And as you go through this a little bit more, you'll see that this pertains to mining asteroids. So we haven't even admitted, you know, Alex, this is funny because we haven't even admitted we could land on an asteroid, let alone know what it's composed of, to know that, to mine it, how to mine it, what to mine for. It's funny that we have this law. I mean, it's not really.
Well, they've landed probes, but that, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a big leap from probes to mining. So
Alex,
they've admitted to landing probes.
Yeah.
But you know, we've had this Space Force, Black Space Force for, you know, off budget system going on for, I don't know, 35, 40 years now. It's really been humming along the last 20, where they've really put some processes in place. They understand how to work in space. They know how to capture asteroids very well. They know how to mine. They've taken equipment that they have found in the rings of Saturn, and they've implemented it and are using it. Equipment that had been abandoned and left behind by previous space star nations that were moving through. So, you know, I mean, we're on this platform that you're referring to, we are much further along than anyone could imagine.
Right.
Probably hundreds and hundreds of years in advance of where most people think we are, at least on that level. So on a spiritual level, we have about 400 years to catch up.
That's huge, because it doesn't even, you know, account for any of that in these laws here. And I know I'm going to ask you about that in just a minute. So I want people to kind of go and do their homework. You can see here that the president this year on February 21st signed Space Policy Directive 4 in the Oval Office, which established the Space Force. Interesting attendees. There's rumor that this lady here is an Anunnaki and that they are part of this. I don't know if you know anything about that, Alex, if you're privy to that part.
There was a photo in the Oval Office, and
Yeah.
he can't see it, but
No.
the lady to his left, and a dark-skinned guy to his left as well, and it was claimed in the internet, I believe, wasn't it, Louisa, that they were either high up in the Space Fleet Command, maybe Pleiadians, maybe, I don't know, Lyran, something. I don't know who they said they were.
Right. Well, and it's also a little bit late, Alex. I mean, this is done this year, 2019, and of course, we know that this law was passed at least 3 years ago, and there is also related bills there, folks. So if you want to look into it a little bit deeper, you can look into see what other related bills came before those. So let me just go on and say, so here it is. Here's the picture that the president is holding up his directive, and there's the Space Force, and here's the logo for the Space Force. I know Alex can't see it because he's joining us by phone, but here it is, and this is what this program's all about today. And Alex is going to be, you know, grounding us a little bit more, because here we have Space Force, we have the admission. Next, we're going to talk about, here we have on Twitter, we have the U.S. Space Command Twitter page, so you can see that. You can see some tweets that they have. Here's pictures of the directors of the Space Command, the U.S. Army Space Command, of course, the Air Force. I think it goes under the Air Force auspices. Is that right, Alex? The Space Command?
Well, for now, the Air Force has a lot of compromised leadership. So it's there for now until things can settle a little bit, and then he intends the intention is to have it become a separate entity to itself.
Okay. I'm almost done with my review.
So it never becomes,
I see.
So it never becomes political.
I see.
Okay? Not in the sense that everything else is right now. Because Air Force is military-industrial complex. Army is military-industrial complex. Navy is breaking free of the military-industrial complex. And they don't want Space Force to ever get into the military-industrial complex because of so much corruption.
Good idea.
Okay, well,
they have to change the culture. They have to change the culture. And if you have something this important with this advanced technology, which can be used against us, you don't even want the culture to set foot, to even take hold in an agency like this, because the type of behavior that we have seen in the military-industrial complex is not tolerated out there. You know, piracy is taken quite seriously in space.
Wow.
By many of these advanced star nations. They don't put up with any bullshit.
That's
you
good.
know, you better have an agenda, and it better be something of benefit to everyone, and it better be fair and equal. Otherwise, you're labeled a pirate, just like the bunch we're trying to get rid of that are here, who have had control of the planet for some time. So, and that's one of the reasons why they're here, is because they understand what we're up against.
Right, we're going to get into that in just a moment, because here what we also have of April of this year is this is published by the Navy. Sorry, I have to go back. Published by the Navy, which was protocols for. Hold on one second. That didn't go back. Okay, so it says Aliens Ahoy, Navy developing guidelines on reporting UFO sightings. So little by little, Alex, we're getting disclosure. We're getting, okay, so we have space policy, we have a space command. Now we have the Navy saying, okay, there are UFOs. You know, we're establishing new protocols to you know, for pilots to report UFO sightings and so forth. So now we're, you know, little by little, this disclosure, it's interesting, because I guess they didn't think people were going to, this is just a Pleiadian Perspectives. It's another, another resource people can look into on human evolution. There's another one here. There's a few more here. The Alien Interview. You're probably familiar with that, Alex.
I am. I don't know how much of that is real, though.
Okay.
The Alien Interview specifically.
Okay.
But, you know, Louisa, this is, if I could just add something to where we are at the moment.
Absolutely.
You know, humanity, and I've talked about this in previous webinars. Are you familiar with the Blue Brain Project in Switzerland?
It's called Blue Brain?
Yes.
Blue Brain, no.
Okay.
No.
They have taken MRI technology, and they've added some components to it. And they have been able to map the multidimensionality of the human brain. Oh. And what they have found in all of humanity are interdimensional and multidimensional structures that are already in our brain, built in our brain. Some of us have 11 densities structures of 11 densities. Some have 9, some have 10, some have 6, some have 5, some have of 7 or whatever it is. Okay. Everybody has this already inside of us.
Even with 2 strands of DNA.
Even with 2 strands of DNA, now we're all multidimensional. You know, the spiritual component of us is already multidimensional. We know this. Okay, that's what we know as the spirit. So when the spirit attaches to the physical body in utero, it creates a template, and what they're seeing in the brain is just part of the template of the multidimensionality of the soul.
Right.
All right.
Oh.
Now, when you look at DNA, and I'm sure you're aware of this, when they've done experiments with DNA moves in and out of third dimension all the time. All right? And they can move DNA across a table, and when they hit it with a frequency, the DNA in one jar disappears, and then it shows up in another jar across the table.
That's right.
So what happens is it leaves third density, and it travels multidimensionally to another place.
Okay.
So, and then the reality is that 95% of us is always multidimensional. What we see here in the physical is a very, very small piece of who we really are.
Are there 12 densities now? Because it wasn't it 94 that there was a 12th density that appeared?
Yes, that's exactly right. In our linear time, 1994 is when a 12th density began to appear to connect to us to third density.
Right. And what did that change?
Yes. Well, we're seeing the changes now. We're seeing the changes, at least here, we're seeing the changes. The perspective of the galaxy, of the universe, of all that is, I should say, is dramatically changing in all, other dimensions, because there are life forms in the 11th density, the 12th density, that have the ability to look down through all the dimensions. Now, apparently they're not creator, all right? I don't know what you would call them. They're not gods in training. Do we call them angels? I don't know what we call them. And everybody else is...
It's just another density.
Yes, but what they know is that they're completely different than anything we've ever known. Not only in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, and 10th, and 11th, they're completely different. But what they're doing is they are unifying all the dimensions for a specific reason. There is a God, what's the word I'm looking for?
You lost the last.
There is an interconnectedness.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is an interconnectedness that's being created by these beings on a, what we would call a spiritual level, harmonic level, that our universe, our holograph, which contains all of the universe that we know, has never had before.
Wow.
Now, the immediate result that we're seeing here in third density is what Art Bell used to call was the quickening, the awakening of humanity, the awakening of our DNA, the transformation of how we see ourselves and our connectedness to all that is. Another example of that. There are many kids and many human beings that have had near-death experiences.
Right.
When they come back into their bodies, many of them have a third strand of DNA. Some have 4. There's a gentleman in New Zealand who was dead almost 3 hours. When he came back, he had 6 strands of DNA.
Whoa.
That were turned on.
What do you think is happening there?
Hold on just one second.
Um,
okay, go ahead. Yeah, there's a little delay, so we're trying not to talk over each other. Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, okay. I'm okay. What was your question, Steve?
What do you think's happening there? They're connecting to these other holographs, and they're reclaiming their DNA, or they're becoming their frequencies changing. What's happening?
We call this in New Age circles, it's fancied about that we're awakening.
Okay.
Okay. The actual truth is we're beginning to remember who we really are. That's what it is. Okay. If each one of us already has these multi-dimensional templates inside of us, they just didn't come with third density. Okay. That wasn't an option if you bought the sports model. Okay. You got these multi-dimensional upgrades. That isn't how it works. That can only come with the soul as it travels through different dimensions into different physicalities.
Right. So
that's the only way this works. So where we are now is that the frequencies are changing so dramatically that humanity is beginning to remember that we are, in fact, multidimensional souls that got trapped in a physical dimension by being tricked and manipulated.
So the original blueprint is being regained, in short.
Yes, and it's also being upgraded because we have this 12th dimension.
Okay. let me before we go further, I just wanted to say I'm showing the screenshot here of these lights recently off of the coast of North Carolina. So folks, we have a graduation here of intel that, you know, we have official recognition of this. We have this being reported on mainstream media now. Oh my goodness, that's the holy grail, right? That makes it official. So now that we have the laws, now that we have the Space Command, now that we have the policy, and we have sightings, and of course there's so many sightings, there's so many reportings of sightings, the next question really is, you know, what about contact? And this is really where Alex comes in. For those of you who aren't familiar with Alex, he is an Andromedan Contactee. He has been lecturing about these Earth's dilemma, and I'll let Alex explain what that is, since 1991. He has been they imparted this information to Alex to spread the news. His background includes professional and industrial businesses that include cybersecurity and aerospace. So I just wanted to, I know we kind of jumped into it, I wanted to get that out up in the beginning, so everybody had some context as to where Alex is coming from. Many people are familiar with Alex, and for those who aren't, we just gave you a little bit more background. So Alex, we talked the other day. It's interesting because there's so many things to talk about, and I do want to just let our viewers know that this 2 hours is going to go by very, very quickly. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a GoldFish report. We're going to do a special thing that we haven't done before. You know, we never monetized our channel, and what we're going to do this time is to cover expenses. We're going to do a special super chat on YouTube, and we're going to invite Alex to come on and answer questions. So they're going to be super chat donations. It's going to help to cover expenses of this. And Alex is going to give his time to answer super chat questions one-on-one to individuals. And we've never done this before, so this is really exciting. We're people, because anytime I've done anything live was always at the White House when I was reporting from the White House. So since I haven't been back at the White House for a while, this is kind of one way that there could be real-time interaction with our viewers. So we are looking forward to doing that, and I will announce it again at the end of our interview. But let's talk about this. So look, Andromedans. So what role do they play here? Now that we know all of this officially is happening, we have to have some contact. There's a lot of history here with the treaty that Eisenhower signed that kind of sold humanity down the river. This dilemma, would you like to explain in your words what this dilemma is? Earth's dilemma.
Okay. Yeah, I would love to. Okay. In a nutshell, what I'll try to do is condense this of all the years and just give it to you as short and as sweet as possible. Essentially, here's the deal. Earth, the makeup of humanity on a physical level is made up of at least 22 different extraterrestrial races, a genetic lineage to other star nations. Earth has been inhabited and has been used as a way station, a port of harbor for space traveling extraterrestrial star nations for millions of years. And that's right, millions of years.
Oh.
So, and they've come and they've visited. Our ecosystem is such that, you know, many star nations and space explorers, they have found things along their travels, life forms. And what they have done is they have taken some of their DNA of these life forms and they have altered them to see if they would survive in our ecosystem. So, you know, that's why Earth looks like a zoo. And the 7 worlds that we have here are so dense with life. And that's because this has been, for the most part, it turned out to enter a huge experiment. So what happened is a very bad group, a rogue group, pirates, somehow managed to find their way here and hide. They were able to hide. And they kept a very, very low profile from their star brothers and sisters, and for, you know, a million years or so, pretended not to be doing anything bad or harmful. They were just here and not interfering. That's the way they made it look. Then you have the Anunnaki, the Nibiru specifically, that their star system passes through our solar system. They interacted. Some were very benevolent. Some really didn't care for us at all. They just looked at us as roaches, as a natural resource. But others were very compassionate towards humanity, and they did things to help, teaching us agriculture, animal husbandry, construction, astronomy, mathematics, things of that nature, the healing arts, how to use the plants to heal certain diseases and things of that nature. Some actually taught us some spirituality, energy fields, chakras, etc., etc. And then they eventually all moved on. So what happened was in the 50s, well, actually it began with the Nazis. Somehow the Nazis got hooked up with the Draconians and the Greys. And things really went south for humanity after that. As the Nazis or the German people were incredibly industrious, great builders, great inventors, had a real gift for being able to see how things worked. And they were perfect in order to lure them into, okay, if you do this, we will give you technology.
What were
and
they
that's
giving?
where it started. Okay, that's where it started with the Nazis. And then it later happened with the United States. Again, it was the same exact scenario. They dangled all of this technology and said, look, we just want to study you, maybe do some experiments. We'll tell you who we're doing it with, what we're doing. We won't do anything nefarious, et cetera, and in return for this, we will give you technology. Well, the reality is no one kept their promise because these groups were nefarious. They were on the run, which, of course, we didn't know. And we made the leap. We made the leap into the technological generation. And the issue is that when we leaped into the technological generation with these beings, our top scientists and those who began to work with them on their programs and the budgets and the special access projects that became part of the structure to support this system, their consciousness shifted away from a compassionate human one to beginning to think like the extraterrestrials. In other words, it was a gradual leaving behind your compassion and your association with humanity to be isolated in these programs and to see humanity as just something that's holding you back.
So this was as a result of Operation Paperclip, is that correct? Alex?
Yeah, that's part of it. But, you know, the Russians got some of those as well. But
right.
Yes, in essence, that's exactly what happened. There was a lot more going on that we don't know. I don't know if we'll ever find out. But I think we will one day. I don't know if it's going to be any of our governments that tell us. I think it's going to be the extraterrestrials who at some point sit down humanity and say, look, here's the whole story of who you are and how we got here and why we're here. All right? That day is going to come when they lay it out for us. Because the last thing the benevolence want is to be worshipped. That is not what they're about. Sure. You know, what they want is humanity to step forward and become a part of the family of the galactic, and not as, you know, in other words, they don't want to come into like a CPS system where they have to come in and protect us and babysit us. That's not what this is about. The other factor here is to get rid of this bunch that has been doing this to many, many star nations and have for millions of years, where they've come in and they've taken evolving civilizations and they've turned them into slaves and natural resources and literally have fed off of them. All right?
Yeah.
And, you know, that shit is done. It's over. Everybody's done with that, because as the new frequency is coming in, and it's coming from the top down, this has to change. This whole system of how third density's been managed is going to change. And this particular bunch, they have a lot to answer for.
Yep.
Steve, did you have a question?
So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we're at this moment.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think, once that our timelines were messed with by time travel by the Greys. Is that still? I mean, where are we at with the timeline situation? If things are going to improve, are the new energies shifting us onto more positive timelines? Because we have been messed with in that sense, haven't we?
Okay, that's a great question. Yes, the Greys did that, but so did the Nazis, and so did CERN. They created parallel timelines. And my understanding is that the last timeline is being merged together as we speak. Because when the change comes, it can only be one timeline. Right. It can't be multiple. All right? So there's only going to be one timeline. So they're being merged as we speak using dimensional technology. And this is why you see people talk about the, what do they call it? The Mandarin something.
Oh, the Mandela,
where things are changed. The Mandela effect. Right. That's what the Mandela effect is. It's tiny little changes because they're merging the timelines. And also, this is why in the merging of the timelines, there are people that see dinosaurs. They see all these weird creatures in the sky. It's because they're merging these timelines. And as they merge, what happens is the critters that aren't supposed to be here, they just dissolve. Because this isn't their frequency. This is not the frequency that they were supposed to be on. But nonetheless, their physicality has to be merged into our timeline. So that's what's happening.
Okay. You mentioned CERN earlier. So how does CERN play a role in this? And ultimately, what are they trying to accomplish with it?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't know everything about what's going on with CERN as far as the inside of CERN. I know that they told everybody they were trying to do some other things, looking for the God particle and yada, yada, yada. Yeah. But what's interesting is when they turn this sucker on, it is aimed at the North Pole of Saturn. Okay. Yeah, it is aimed at the North Pole of Saturn. And my understanding is that several times they were very close to opening it up completely. In other words, they were able to see stuff on the other side. And we can talk about Saturn in a sec here. But my understanding is that the benevolent groups, and there's many, every time they get to that point, they shut it off. They turn it off, they turn it off, they turn it off. Yeah. Because we're playing with matches, and we have no idea what we're doing. Yeah. Because, you know, Saturn, it's kind of like a jail.
A prison.
It's kind of like a jail.
The galactic prison.
It's like a jail.
Itmo.
And yeah, and it needs to remain closed.
Good.
Well, who's there?
And you know, that's all I'm going to say at this point. Maybe there'll be others in the future, because you know, you talk about that, and all hell comes down on you. But it's kind of like a prison. Okay, there's a reason they call it the planet of war. There's a reason for that.
Right.
So
bad hombres.
Yeah, bad hombres. Okay, so this technology, though, I mean, we've had, we have stargates on the planet. Why do we need CERN?
Well, none of the stargates are connected to Saturn.
Oh, well, that's the answer. There you go. So then this is okay. So no, we're getting more.
The order of the Black Sun worships Saturn, doesn't it? The Order of the Black Sun.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
There you go.
So they're trying to bring in their league of Satan over here, aren't they?
Well, yeah, it's much bigger than that, actually. But yeah, in essence. In essence.
Okay, so okay, go
ahead. Some of the Nibiru, as a whole, as a royal family. I'm not talking about the Anunnaki, which is the middle management class of the Nibiru civilization. But the Nibiru, the royals, they've had some real serious battles with reptilian entities. And my understanding is the ones that were in our solar system that were part of the last major war that our solar system had, when they were captured, they were put somewhere in Saturn or on Saturn to remain forever.
Right. I'll tell you, boy, this is interesting because I started out talking about very 3D stuff, kind of very Earth-based, treaties and laws, and then boom, we launched right into outer space.
Well, we're still in our solar system.
Yeah, we're still in our solar system, but we are far out, aren't we? The technology, let me just back up a minute. The technology that we got from, well, look, let's talk about Roswell, too. I mean, we're talking about, the Yellow Book. We're talking about transistors. What other things?
Teflon.
Alex, that we...
Well, yeah, we did get all that. In, Colonel Corso documents that all in his book. But, that was their throwaway stuff.
Yeah.
That was all their throwaway stuff. That's what they gave us. It was their junkyard stuff.
Junkyard. What about, the nuclear bomb? I mean, obviously, things seem to kind of get very heated during the Cold War because of all the nuclear, and then, of course, Project Blue Book was created to kind of control the narrative of these UFO sightings, because suddenly we had nuclear technology, which we weren't supposed to have. What was that all about, Alex?
Well, the use of nuclear weapons in the history of Earth has been documented.
Yeah, we've had them before.
Yes, it's been used before. Now, the Indian history documents a great deal about weapons, extraterrestrial weaponry.
Yeah.
And of course, the Germans built the very first nuclear weapon that we're aware of.
That's right.
In our time. The problem is they couldn't get the switches to work. They couldn't get it to go off.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know this, is that after the war was over, in the mountain caves and underground facilities in Bavaria, the U.S. military was able to bring that stuff back to the U.S. and study it and take it apart. Now, what's interesting is that they were able to figure out how to make it work, how to turn it on so it would explode. And the very first weapon that we tested in New Mexico was a German-made nuclear weapon.
Well, Oppenheimer was a German, wasn't he?
No, this is
Yes, he was.
What about Werner von Braun? Wasn't he doing this?
Oh, he was the rocket. That was a rocket technology.
Well,
yes, that was something else.
It was teleportation too, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that.
Alex?
Well, it was theory then. They had been told about it. They may have seen it work, or at least the Order of the Black Sun. They may have shared the fact that they witnessed teleportation. But my understanding is that the Greys and the Draconians never actually gave them that technology. They were dangling it as a carrot. But when the Germans decided to give up World War II, and I want to repeat that again, when they decided to give up fighting World War II, you know, they bolted to Antarctica and to South America. So that kind of, those things were just, they were put aside for a while. I don't know that the Germans even have it today. They probably do, or the Nazis. I don't know an awful lot about what they've been up to because my focus has been on the big picture, you know. But I know that there's probably a lot of researchers out there who have done incredible work who can answer that question more specifically. But, you know, we were given technology we spiritually were not mature enough to have. And they knew what we would do with it. And when it came time to take us off-world to do the dirty deed for them, you know, they knew that they would have many willing accomplices because these black programs were specifically looking for warriors who had no compassion, who were just after spoils, wealth, technology, things of that nature, to be genetically enhanced. There are many who wanted to be supermen, you know, without the spiritual foundation to even approach that kind of a thing in an appropriate way.
So Alex, let me ask you something.
You know, go ahead.
You mentioned these, well, because you mentioned so many things that it's like I know you're trying to explain it, but it's like very interesting topics. You talk about the DNA and these super soldiers that were augmented, some of them, and they're in these unacknowledged programs. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so Russ Dizdar talks about this all the time, about these satanic super soldiers. So they were basically created during some kind of satanic ritual. And of course, their DNA was enhanced with who knows what. Do you know what they were enhanced with?
Okay, let's talk about that. We're going into territory I've been very careful
to avoid
about going into, but I want you to look at this idea. Okay. A satanic ritual, as I understand it, calls down spirit, a demonic spirit, a dark entity, or a specific type of frequency that this being will vibrate to.
Yeah.
Now, that's called in from lower fourth density.
Right.
And lower fourth density is really fucked up. Can I say that?
Tell us how you really feel, Alex.
I get the picture.
Okay, it's okay. You'll have to delete that. It's really, really messed up. All right, it's really messed up. And there's a lot of dark stuff there. Just a lot of dark stuff.
Okay.
So what happens is these super soldiers who are turned into these demonic entities, they are injected with the DNA of those specific type of life forms, those extraterrestrial entities or physical entities. The DNA from those entities is injected into the human super soldier, so that when the merging of the dark soul and the human body in the soldier come together, the entity, the dark entity, has a familiarization with the body because its own DNA is in the body. It can now attach.
Right.
And what's taken out, what's removed, is the soul of the original soldier.
Wow.
They're removed. That soul's removed. So the entity comes in and it literally takes over. Now, it can mimic the original soldier because it has its entire DNA memory.
Whoa.
It's like a transplant.
And a lot of times that's exactly what they do.
Well, what about the MK Ultra, the splitting of the, you know, the creating the altars and things like that for, you know, these Manchurian candidates and things like that? Is that part of that?
Yeah, but that's different. That's psychological. That is not a genetic manipulation.
Okay. Do they combine them? Do they combine them?
That's where they, you know, they create multiple personalities.
Right.
And they switch them, and they flip switches, and you go back and forth, back and forth. Now, a lot of that can also be because someone has an attachment, a regressive, negative spiritual attachment. Mm-hmm. That also can be part of why someone has a multiple personality.
Okay. So look, the thing for me is that we've been messed around. Genetics has been messed up. Alpha Draconians are experts at geneticists. You know, the Greys. Yes, the Greys were dying out as a race because they were messed with at some point. So they needed to replenish, or they were trying to create a hybrid, I believe. So we were messed with in so many levels. We're used as a resource. The benevolence, as far as I would understand, is if they're benevolent, they would have a non-interventionist policy with a lower, sort of a lesser advanced race. So they would treat us with kid gloves. They would want us to, for us to develop on our own without intervening too much. How much are they intervening with our level of messed upness in this state we have here? What do you think?
You know, Steve, that's the $64,000 question, and I really appreciate you asking it.
Okay.
What's happened is that because for a dimension, in order for fifth dimension to evolve to sixth, for fourth to evolve into fifth, for third to evolve into fourth,
right?
Everyone has to do it together.
So everybody's screwed if we don't move along because we're blocking the system.
Exactly. And this is why the A's came here in the first place from fifth density, because in their future, tyranny shows up.
Oh, I see.
And
we dragged them down.
We dragged everybody down.
Right.
We're like the anchor.
So they're
now, because of the collection of the souls that we have here, some of us have been in 11th, some of us have been 9th, 10th, 11th, 4th, 5th, 6th. You know, we have to graduate. We have to be part of this process. You see?
But Alex,
because it's because we all have. Well, let me finish. I'm looking for the words here. We all have this symbiotic relationship as spirit to each other. Yeah. You know, it's all one organism, regardless of the vibrational densities. We're all one organism. So we have to go together. So they had no choice but to intervene. And when they got here, they had no idea the collection of souls that were here.
How bad it was.
They were actually shocked that the level of the quality of spiritual souls that are on this planet who have been suppressed, they were shocked.
Boy.
Literally shocked.
Well, that's good to know. What isn't there though a 100th monkey effect? I mean, we don't need all of us to do it together, do we? Do we just need to have, you know, a certain percentage?
Okay, well, the certain percentage is a point where you reach and you trigger total consciousness evolution. All right? Now, people may leave physically, but their souls, in many respects, are still attached to Earth or around Earth. All right? Their consciousness. If we can trigger the 100th monkey, what happens is we trigger the conscious awakening of humanity. And that's what the biggest component is, getting us there. But then in order to give that movement more power, you're going to have to, the explanation as to what you're experiencing, why you're experiencing it, and who you are really has to come into play. And we're never going to get that from Earth religions. That can only come from beings off-world who have not only been through the process, but who have been watching us for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And many of us have direct spiritual reincarnational history with many of these star nations. We have been in physical forms in many of these other star nations before. So there's going to be a presentation of some sort that will trigger absolute recognition in every single person,
right,
dead or alive.
Well, what about this compression breakthrough? Okay, let's go back to this. There's supposed to be this great solar
They're
flash.
forcing the issue. They're forcing the issue.
Okay.
Who's they?
It started about 3.5 to 4 weeks ago, my understanding in our linear time. Okay, and this compression is literally to force those who simply refuse to evolve
To get it.
out of physicality.
Who is they?
That's what it is.
Cool. Okay.
The A's.
Who are the? Well, it's a collection. It's a collection of.
Benevolence.
My understanding is that the technology actually comes out of the 6th density, and 5th and 4th are all part of it. 4th density has a very specific process and role to play now, and I'm talking about star nations that are in 4th density because they're the closest to us. We have more in common with them on a physical level than we would with 5th density or 6th.
Right.
So when this process really begins to kick in and we start to see a lot of people just leaving, physically leaving in droves, they're being removed from this specific evolution of humanity. They're literally being removed. Now, they can always change their mind and say, okay, I get it, I will evolve. And they can commit, again, to the process.
Right.
But that's a spiritual decision, and that also means a level of genuine spiritual authenticity.
Yeah.
And many of these people, many of these beings are so detached from their own light that they no longer even recognize it.
Yeah, it's been so long.
So they probably will start over as rocks. I don't know. But that's what's going on. This compression has begun, and we're seeing this as part of the Schumann resonance.
Right.
It's rising.
It is just popping. It is just popping off the charts. In fact, half the time they won't even give us the actual readings anymore because it makes no sense to them.
What is
they're like, how can this be happening? And that's because they don't factor in the spiritual component of all existence, and that's what quantum physics is proving.
Okay.
Is that we're all spiritual.
But doesn't the Schumann frequency, isn't that an aggregate of not just Earth's frequency, but humanity's frequency as well?
No, it's not. It's actually affecting us. It's coming from somewhere else. The energy that is hitting the planet isn't necessarily coming just from the sun. It's coming from other dimensional realms.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and with it carries information. Remember, everything is color, light, and sound. Yeah. Everything. All you do is you tweak the frequency, and it becomes matter.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay?
Yeah. Alex, what does Phaseus say? That you have contact with him? What does he say? Where are we at the moment?
I'm sorry, who? Phaseus?
Yeah, Phaseus.
Oh, Phaseus passed away in September of '98. He left their physicality. The only one I'm still talking to is Mornay. And actually, we just got, we were out of contact for 10 months, almost 11 months. And we just started communicating. I've had one contact in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And I'm expecting another one anytime soon.
What does he say where we are at the moment? Does he comment on it?
I'll tell you where we're at. The reason they were away is they're tweaking. They're doing tweaking. We have 6th density mentors are mentoring 5th density mentors who are mentoring 4th density mentors.
Oh,
okay? And primarily the 4th density star nations that we would consider absolutely benevolent. And the Pleiadians are part of this. And many other nation or star systems we would recognize. They're doing a lot of the heavy lifting. What's happening is as they are doing this compression of 3rd density, they are also hitting the planet with consciousness, with knowledge, with ideas that people are getting, and they're doing their best to trigger everyone's DNA to remember who they are.
Right.
All right. Now, as they're doing this, the A's and several other specific groups go into their future to see how their future, where the tyranny shows up, how it's changing and altering. And depending upon what they see there, they come back and they tweak what the 4th density mentors are doing. So to get the result where everything is going to be absolutely perfectly balanced, that's what they're doing. Now, you say, well, why would they be doing that? Well, because consciousness changes everything.
Yes.
And you have to understand that this collection of souls on Earth, guys, we have so much power.
Yes.
We have so much power, and we haven't got a clue how to use it.
Yeah.
So they're having to coach us, and it's like literally we're in 1st grade, you know, and they're trying to lead us, but at the same time, they want our free will involved so that we own the process. As we awaken up, we have got to own the process of spiritually evolving.
Yeah, it's a tightrope.
Okay, I know, but we've been held hostage here. We've been usurped. We've had our.
Okay, that's old. That's old stuff. That's old stuff. Okay, we're not being held hostage anymore. What you see with the deep state and all that stuff, that's the last remnants of the old order.
Right.
All right. Literally, that's the last remnants of the old order. And what we're faced with on the surface is our own people having betrayed their own races and their own countries for power. All right. And we're going to have to deal with that, and we will. So, but you know, this deep state and the cabal, they no longer have their extraterrestrial overlords protecting them. That's over. The overlords are running for their own life because now they're being hunted to be captured.
So there is
I kid you not, this is going on.
Right.
Very good.
They're being removed. They're being removed.
Yee-hoo.
No, this is really, but people don't know this. That's why we want to do these reports and kind of give everyone the update and tell you, you know, you're free. you're not, we'll see though.
You are. And you know, and now and at some point there'll be no more excuses. You know, we will all have to own the process of our spirituality and evolving. And it's just a question of laying out the scenario for everybody. I mean, you know, we're all very intuitive in our own ways. And a lot of people have known forever things were wrong. I think there's a lot of young people all over the planet that are committing suicide because they just feel such despair.
Yes.
Because I think they're relatively new souls, and they come in here and they look at how dark this is, where those of us who have incarnated over and over and over again, you know, we've kind of learned how to deal with it. But some of these new souls, they're like, I'm bugging out. No way, you know. No way do I want to deal with this. Because, you know, they're literally, they're tenderfoots. They were not prepared for this.
You are so right.
But they volunteered, you know, they volunteered to come in, and then they got here and they're like, oh, shit.
Right.
This is far worse than I ever imagined.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, because when the first sentence my youngest daughter could say was, "I want to go home." I mean, we were in our living room. She says, "I want to go home." I thought, okay, I'm just your Earth mom. I get it. I want to go home. I'm like,
this is bad, Mom. This is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
So it's complicated, but once you've got some of the pieces, it all begins to make sense, and a picture begins to evolve. We needed help. Yes, the benevolence realized they have a non-interventionist policy.
Yeah.
However, they had to intervene because some of us are them and they are us. And what was happening here, the level of manipulation and despicable shit that was going on here by these regressive groups was absolutely beyond the pale.
Yep.
And so they stepped in, and there's no turning around. This is absolutely going to go down, and I'm hoping it's in my lifetime.
Right.
But this is absolutely going to go down, and we're well on the way. There's no turning back. I mean, for the most part, they've already lost. We have to deal with the corrupt governments on the surface.
Yes.
And we will. It's going to be a while, but each one will be dealt with. And then after that's over with, humanity has to figure out what it is they really want.
Yes.
And, Star Trek, Star Wars, those are realities to most other star nations. They're out there doing this stuff all the time. And there's absolutely no reason we can't either.
Yes.
Especially what we've been through. What we've been through, no one else has gone through. Not like this. That's why they've saved us for last. They rescued the 21 other star systems before they got to us, because, this is where the seat of power was for these dark guys.
Wow.
Was here on Earth.
So
right.
Are you saying what about, right now the court system we have, everything is very corrupt. Like you said, we have to deal with that. But a lot of people, as Phil Schneider, there's a lot of whistleblowers, Alex, that aren't with us today. They were targeted.
I know that.
It's very hard to get that information out.
I'm more aware of that than having at least 8 death threats myself.
Right.
I'm well aware of that.
Yeah.
Well, it's a positive. Yeah.
Well, hold on a second. Just how it's a little hard to break out when
But what choice do we have? What choice do we have? We have to push forward. I mean, when you break it down, do you want to be a slave or do you want to be free? Now, who's going to choose slavery? No one.
Yeah.
No one's going to choose being a slave. Everybody wants to be free. Every soul truly wants to be free. So we have no choice. And that's really it's a very simple equation. Okay? It's a very simple equation. And once people get that, I think they'll choose that. I truly do. No matter what our differences is, even political differences, we all want to be secure, to raise our families, our kids to be safe, and to be able to have a decent life, a good life. We all basically want the same things.
Right.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with having a different perspective.
Yeah. What you're saying is
when you lay out the cards and you lay out the entire truth of all that's been going on and is going on, then you know what? Something miraculous happens. Everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
Steve, you have a question for Alex?
Yeah, I do. Alex, what you're saying is absolutely right. I'm in complete agreement. I think it's natural that humanity would choose freedom, but my problem is, from my understanding of humanity at its current state, is that people aren't aware that they're in a prison. They're not aware that that we've been manipulated. They just simply have no knowledge of it all.
They're sleepwalking.
It's sleepwalking.
Exactly.
So, we've been manipulated through media. The control has been pervasive. And for humanity to be re-educated, they at least have to have an awareness of what's happened before they can even make a decision. And then they have to acclimatize to this new information, because what they've been told is absolute crap about history.
They don't know they're slaves. They don't know they don't know they're slaves.
So you must understand. I mean, people here, we've been looking at this for years. You've been very aware since you were a child, but most people have no idea, and I'm dealing with this every day. I'm frustrated. I don't know how long the process will be. I'm going crazy.
Hey, listen, Alex.
Yeah, well, you know what I'm talking about. So I don't know I don't know how long it will take humanity to get, first of all, that we're not alone in the universe. So most people don't get that at all because of the propaganda. Second of all, that once they swallow that and digest it, could be years till they get to a stage where they understand what has actually happened. What do you think about that? Should we start a re-educational program?
Well, that's one of the things that I mentioned when we first got on the phone call. My frustration is, because how do you fix stupid? But again, understanding the fact that people don't know, I understand that. I don't know how long this process is going to take. Do I think it's multi-generational? No, I don't. I think things are going to move very, very quickly. But, once you get rid of all the lies and deceit, what's left? There's only one thing left when you get rid of all the lies and the deceit, and that's the truth. And when the truth is standing there in front of everybody and it's laid out, the choices are real simple. They really are. And most people will get that. Yeah. Most people will absolutely get that. So, I have a lot of faith in humanity, because when you look at all the shit we've been up against, the control, the manipulation, and yet here we are still having children, still wanting to move forward, have families, celebrate holidays, love each other. That says a lot about who we are.
It is. It does.
It really does. So, we can't give up on us. It's just, we've been ahead of the curve, and now we're waiting for everybody to catch up.
Oh, boy.
But, it is what it is.
Okay.
It is what it is.
Now,
there's hope.
What about inner Earth, Alex? What's going on? How is this compression? Where does that figure in to all this? Are they going to come up?
That's an area I can't go into.
Oh.
Okay.
I can't go into that because apparently someone else is supposed to be talking about that, and it's not me.
Okay.
I do know that the inner Earth is changing as well. Everything's changing.
Sure.
All right. The Earth is growing. She's expanding, getting bigger to accommodate a larger population. Okay.
We have sinkholes.
Interesting.
What's that?
We have sinkholes appearing. Is that part of it?
Yeah, they're all over the place. Well, a lot of that has to do with movement of the tectonic plates.
Right. There's more
that
space.
Are occurring very deep in the Earth, and water and magma flows. There's a lot going on.
Stuff going on. Yep.
And there will be Earth changes. There will be Earth changes. But as far as the inner Earth, let me just say this, and this is all I'm going to say, that's where a lot of the Nephilim have been.
Right.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, we know what they are. Okay. And
okay.
Is that related to Antarctica? What's going on there?
Pretty much the same thing. What's going on in the inner Earth?
Okay. So I ask all the forbidden questions. Yeah, like there's no. Okay.
Well, no, but you're a woman, and that's your job, right?
That's right. Some people don't understand that. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So all right then.
I do.
Thanks, Alex. What do the Andromedans really want us to know at this point? Like, how can we? What is their greatest concern at this point? They see the spirituality, the variety of souls.
I don't. Well, their concerns have changed over the years. Based on my last conversation with Mornay, he was extremely upbeat, very positive about the situation here. Now, I don't know everything at all, but his feeling is that humanity has already turned the corner.
Wow.
And because the real threat has been removed. There is not going to be a nuclear war. It's never going to be allowed to happen. Because, those rip holes and dimensions and everybody's just fed up with all that nonsense. Mm-hmm. So that's not going to happen. So we don't have to worry about that. Every country has their deep state, and in every country, that deep state's being revealed. Okay, that's not an accident. that's being instigated and manipulated, for lack of a better word, by the compression of the density. All right. Okay, so that's being done on purpose to expose those who are really anti-human. Right. And unfortunately, what we're going to witness is that a majority of them, not all of them, but a majority of them are going to be our own kind that are in this. They left humanity. They just left humanity. So they're going to have to be dealt with in some way or fashion.
Should we name names here? I mean, we we could get ourselves in trouble. You're right. Look at what the Democrats are doing. It's all being exposed that they're really the party of treason and sedition, and that they're basically communists, and they're the deep state. They're the infiltrators. I say this on all my POTUS reports. I'm used to the death threats. But anyway, it's just what it is. It's being exposed, like you said. We have Q out here. We have an alliance behind President Trump, a positive military. We have, and Judge Jeanine Pirro called it out by name. You love Judge Jeanine, right? And she called out the military-industrial complex. I mean, look, we had Eisenhower warn us of this operation. We had Kennedy lay it out for us. The secret society, and
let's talk about that. Can I add something here?
Please do.
Okay, Lieutenant Colonel Vineland, who testified last week in front of the kangaroo court for Adam Schiff. Mm-hmm. He's mentioned that the interagency was very upset with the direction that President Trump wanted to take our foreign policy. Well, Trump gets the fact that we all live on this planet together and we will sink or swim together. He gets that.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the interagency is, of course, the military-industrial complex.
Yep.
Now, it even goes further than that. Mm-hmm. If you remember John Kennedy, when he was first sworn in, after he became, after he won the election, he had a lot of interactions with Dwight D. Eisenhower. They spent a lot of time on a golf course where Jack Kennedy would drive the golf cart for Eisenhower, and they would talk about a lot of things. And the reason they would go out on the golf course is because no one could hear their conversation.
Right.
Yep.
And that's where Kennedy was told about the ETs. Right. That's where he was told about many, many other things that he lost control of.
Right.
Now, when Jack Kennedy was sworn in, the very first act he took when he got to the White House was to abolish the Special Operations Coordinating Group in the National Security Council. These are ingrained bureaucrats that come and go, that administrations come and go, but they remain the same. They were the ones collecting and putting all of the intelligence together to present to the executive branch. Eisenhower knew he couldn't trust them at all, and he learned that during the Korean War. They were giving him fake information to drag this thing out. Okay?
Yeah.
So, Kennedy gets taken out. One of the first things that Lyndon Johnson does is reinstate Special Operations Coordinating Group in the National Security Council. Today, it's just known as Special Group. All right? Special Group is part of SES,
right.
Senior Executive Services, which is owned by a British corporation.
Serco.
Go figure.
That's the problem. That is a huge issue. And I'm sure the president knows about this. Yes,
right.
Senior Executive Services. Now, one of their guys was Barack Obama. He was born in Kenya, which makes him a British national.
Right.
The Democrats never vetted him. Or they were in on it. And eventually it's all going to come out. But Barack Obama is a British national. He admits to being born in Kenya. July of 2018, when he went over to Kenya, he said it himself to the people there that I'm the first Kenyan-born president of the United States.
Yeah, I saw this.
Boom.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay? So that makes him a British national.
All right.
So this shit goes deeper than anyone can imagine. But it's all coming to the surface. It really is.
Yeah.
It's just that the American people are going to have to take it in little slices, you know, and digest it, process it before you give them the next thump of intelligence.
Well, where does Trump fit into all this?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, where does Trump fit into all this?
Abraham Lincoln once asked his people, his closest confidants, do you think we're fitted to the times? I think that Trump is specifically fitted to the times.
Right.
And I say that because, one, he really loves America. He really loves humanity. Two, he can't be bought. He doesn't need anything.
That's right.
Three, the White Hats absolutely trust him because he has done so much for the military that no one knows anything about. They knew they could go to him and trust him.
Right.
Four, he's a prize fighter. He gets in there and he loves the championship rounds. The nastier, the dirtier it gets, the stronger he becomes. And that's the guy you need to take on this serpent that we're dealing with. And whether you like him or not, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter at all to me, whether you like him or not. What matters is that he's going to go toe to toe with this system. And that's exactly what he's doing.
Indeed.
Yeah,
I often title the reports Teflon Don versus Deep State Palooka. And he was at the Madison Square Garden last night, the president here in New York City, and at a match again. Of course, everybody knows he's been a big supporter of boxing. So he's you're right. You're absolutely right, Alex.
Yeah.
He sure is.
He's a prize fighter.
And it was very
we're
sad.
in the championship round right now. We're in the championship round right now. So,
right.
Yep.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about the Andromedans? Give us an idea of what they look like. And I know you've done this in previous interviews, but just a little briefly, what is your overall experience of being in their presence? And just tell us what you can about them.
Wow, that's a tall order.
Briefly, I don't know.
Well, okay, briefly. Okay, one, they're human. They're human. They have 5 digits on each hand. I've never seen their toes, but I'm assuming they do down there. They are 3 sexes, male, female, and androgynous. They are hairless, as far as I know. They are absolutely physically perfect specimens. Physically, I have never in my life ever felt safer than when I'm with them or in their presence.
Okay.
They change the frequency of everything wherever they are. everything just kind of calms down and just gets, I don't want to say bliss, and I hate the word magical, but
serene.
Everything just gets real calm.
Yeah.
It becomes real solid. You're in a really safe space. They're incredibly compassionate. They are all telepathic. So they don't speak. Mornay has learned to speak. I don't know if he's taught others to speak. When they look at you, they can see right through you. You don't know it at first, but once you're aware of the telepathy factor and you begin to have conversations with them and interact with them, you know that they're looking right through you.
Right.
So you're forced to be absolutely authentic. And they don't judge because they realize that third density life is completely different than what they experience. They have a great deal of compassion for what we've been through. They can't even imagine. I've offered to trade places with Mornay, and he was like, no, that's not an option for me. Right. So he's not a taker. Let's see. They're just so healed. You just know it. I mean, they're like every single one of them, even the kids, they're like sages, you know? They live very long lifetimes. Their average life cycle is over 2,000 years. Some live much longer than that, but that's pretty much the average. They go to school for 150 years or longer, and they learn all the sciences. They learn everything about their society, and any new discoveries that they make as a civilization or any new spiritual awarenesses that they have, they teach the children those things first, because they recognize that the children are always the future, and it's what they call the law of consistency, so that each of the generations have everything that the collective knows, so that they can use for their abilities to continue to evolve. So it isn't surprising that many of the children are smarter than the adults, or more aware of new things, new discoveries, new technologies, etc. That's not uncommon, and no one has an issue with it. So they're absolutely prepared all the time. To move their civilization forward to whatever's on the horizon for them. And they don't understand why other races don't do the same thing. Right. And the mentoring that they do with fourth density physical star nations is just that. They are teaching them these processes as well of the law of consistency. Now, here in the United States, or around the world, the indigenous people knew this stuff. Okay, they knew this. The Aborigines in Australia, who have been around 50,000 years, the Native Americans, the ancient Chinese, the Tibetans, the Mongolians, the indigenous people knew this, because whenever they would make decisions, they would try to push out the effects of those decisions 7, 8, 10 generations. They would at least have those conversations. What would it look like? Where none of Western society does that at all anymore. That's true. We're 5 minutes into the future. That's about it.
Yeah.
So, they knew some of this. And we have a lot of things we need to remember. What happened was we got distracted by all the technology, and that is what separated us not only from the earth, but from our spiritual selves. Instead of developing spiritual technologies within ourselves, we opted for the outside technology, the physical technology, and it can never be the same.
Can we gain that quickly? Because we have these extremes of emotions here that they probably don't have in the same way. But these extremes of emotions can allow us to manifest quickly if we choose to do so. Is that right?
That's exactly right. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier. We have so much power, and we have no idea how to use it.
So we need to channel these emotions in order to manifest in a conscious way. Is that what you're saying?
In essence, yes. It's a little bit more complicated than that.
How would you describe it?
I'll describe it exactly this way. It's not enough to have a level playing field. We need to understand how we got here.
Right.
All right? I mean, everybody needs to know how we got here. And they need to know the history of our race.
Yes.
The good, bad, and the ugly.
Yep.
So that we have a perspective, a starting point of who we are and where we come from and what this is all about. Right. So, that knowledge, that creates the foundation. Humanity, for the most part, hasn't been operating on a real foundation at all.
Oh, no.
Because almost all the history we've been taught is bullshit.
It's bullshit, yeah.
Oh, Common Core. Just so you know, Alex, I'm screen sharing a video from the SETI Ranch. James Gilliland gave me permission to use this, and it was of a craft landing at the base of Mount Adams. And it was green, and the lights were green, and he has this, I guess this report, or non-spoken rapport, you should say, where at the ranch he shines a laser, and when he sees craft, they power up. So there's a communication going on there, and I would hope that they're positive. But can you tell us about the craft, about the Andromedan's craft?
Well, yeah, I could do that. They're built in fifth density, and which is why they're larger on the inside than they are on the outside. And I'll explain how that works.
Okay.
They're grown. Their ships are grown. They're literally living organic things.
Whoa.
And as they're being grown, the crew participates in the building so that there's a familiarity between the ship and the crew. Mm-hmm. And when the ship is actually completed and finished, each crew member will stand underneath the ship, and they have a plate that they put their hands on, and a beam is shot through is shot through the Andromedan crew member into the ship. So the hull literally becomes an extension energetically of the crew member, because they don't have controls. They control the ship all by thought. And the ship will only allow those crew members to enter the craft if they've gone through this process. Otherwise, there's absolutely no way of ever entering their ships. Okay, so they can't be carjacked.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
All right, they can't be carjacked.
Did you have to undergo a special process so that you could enter? I presume you did enter?
I always walked in. If I was physically walking in, I would walk in with Mornay and or Phaseus. Mm-hmm. If the door's open and I'm standing right next to him, I come in. The ship knows me.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Now, and when they don't physically open the hatch, mm-hmm. they would shine a little blue beam, kind of like a laser, on the ground, and I would walk into it. I would dematerialize and rematerialize instantly on board in the ship in one of the rooms. And what they do is they put a belt on me, and they're waiting for me. I put a belt on, and what it does is it holds my physicality together, because sometimes they will move into fourth density, and as long as I have the belt on, my body doesn't disintegrate or come apart. It holds my physicality together. All right? It maintains my physical frequency, my physical frequency. And without the belt, I would disintegrate. And I had to constantly wear that when I went back and visited them in fifth density. Now, the ships that are built in fourth and fifth density are much bigger on the inside. And the reason for that is when they come down into third density, they literally choose the space they want to hold. So when you see something that's 30 feet, that's not how big it is on the inside.
Wow.
All right? It could be gargantuan on the inside. They're just choosing to hold the space of 30 feet on the outside.
Well,
Right.
Do you understand?
yes.
Yeah.
So when the door opens and you walk in, there could be 4, 5, 6 floors with laboratories, maintenance shops, repair areas, cargo bays. I mean, it's just magnificent. It literally takes your breath away. But then when you're outside the craft, it's just this small little thing. And it's only because they choose to hold just that amount of space in third density. And most of them can travel in time. They can go back and forth. Fifth density, there's no issues. I think with fourth, they're somewhat limited with the technology they have as to how far they can go back and forward. Third density craft cannot go into fourth density because their technology just simply won't work because it's a completely different harmonic and physical space. So I know that the Archons made an attempt to leave here and go into fourth and fifth density, and it didn't turn out well for them.
That's good.
So
look, I can't wait to use this stuff. I mean, when are we going to get it? I mean, I'm sick of long haul flights. I tell you. I mean, what are you going to get?
Well, you know, we talked about this earlier about asteroids.
Yeah.
2 years ago, Jupiter picked up an additional 17, 18, 19 moons. Now we're being told that Saturn has picked up some additional moons. 20. It's actually 23. They haven't found the other 3 yet. All right, but they've acknowledged 20. Now, these asteroids have been brought into a orbit around these planets, and there's no collisions. It was a very orderly migration into the solar system and put into the orbits around these two planets.
Right.
You know, they're in retrograde orbits, but no one's running into each other because it was all managed. Okay. Most of these moons have a very specific mineral, and on our periodic chart, the only thing we would recognize would be quartz.
Wow.
But the rest of it we don't have yet. I'm told that our space fleet does know about the mineral. And ultimately what this mineral does is that you can create bows of boats, you can create rods that will fit into lakes, oceans, you can create housing on aircraft engines. And what happens is that when you generate a specific harmonic frequency in this metal, what it does is it causes all of the protons and electrons of pollution to break down and decay and die. Specifically, radiation. It causes it it causes it to speed up its decay process dramatically. That literally what happens is that the uranium, the harmful component of it literally dies, and it just falls to the bottom of the ocean. They brought this material here to help us clean up, our world. And some of the moons have already shown signs of being mined, and that was by other star nations that have already used this technology. So they'll probably bring those out first. But what's going to happen here is whenever this process truly begins, they're going to want us to do all the heavy lifting. They're going to want us to take responsibility for not only the mining, but also the manufacturing and the cleaning up of our environment to get everyone involved in this process. So because it'll unite humanity, and it will help us to re-engage with our home planet. And because most of us have detached from nature almost completely.
So this would fit in perfectly with what Trump's just done, creating the space fleet and the mining rights, or the directives to the mining, with what you're just saying, that he probably knows that these moons were placed there for the cleanup of the planet. Would you think?
There are no accidents. Everything is a process at this point.
Right.
Okay, there's steps that are being taken.
Right.
The only thing that the president has to do now, and the rest of the world, is they have to create a new funding mechanism for all this to occur. We have got to get rid of the central bank system because it's as corrupt as there is corruption.
Absolutely.
It's horrible, and if we don't get rid of it, we're going to be right back in the same place.
Exactly.
So they have to fix that, and I know they're trying to do it.
Right.
Yes. There's if I may mention, there is on the 11th of November, there's Mercury transiting the Sun. Cobra's group has mentioned, I saw it today, that they want to do they want you to purchase silver during the purchase of the Mercury's transit, in order to bring in energetically a new system, or break the old system, the money system. What do you have to say about that? Is that worthwhile doing?
Well, a monetary system is a belief system.
Yes.
That's all it is. The idea of this mineral or that mineral being of more value than any other is all based on supply and demand. But again, it's a belief system. Okay? It's all a belief system. I think this next monetary system that we're going to be having, or that's going to come into play, we may have 50 to 100 years, and if that long, and then that will be it. We will transition out of and evolve out of a monetary system altogether, because no one else uses a monetary system. It's such a trap.
Okay. Let me ask you this about healing technologies, and this is kind of related because they have the Andromedans have such an advanced system. I know they're so much more advanced than us. Maybe you can share with us exactly how advanced they are. But what about, how's their health, and what do they use to stay healthy? Obviously, they don't eat GMO foods. They don't have to breathe in chemtrails. They don't have to get vaccinations. So we need help on that front. And are they going to loan us some, look, we've heard of med beds, healing beds. We've heard of all kinds of healing technologies. Will they loan us some technology?
Well, I don't know that they can loan us their technology. They can probably assist us in building our own, because we would have to use the components that are applicable to third density and or fourth. Okay. I know in fourth density, they have very, very similar technology to the A's. But the reason that they're different is that the physicality vibrates at a different frequency in the fifth density range of life than fourth does. Okay, so the physicality is different. So a fourth density healing bed probably would not work on a fifth density physical body.
Right.
So having said that, fourth density technology would work on a third density body. All right. So, but we would need to have comparable materials to use in order to make this technology. Now, the A's have a camera, and that's the best way to describe it. And what they do is they lay you on a table and they take a picture of you. Now, this picture is from your physical life now, from conception to the present moment when the picture's taken. What they do then is that they look at your body, and let's say you have a bad kidney. Then what they do is they take a slice of the film of the picture they just took of you where your kidney was the healthiest. They take it out, they put it back into the camera, and the camera holographically projects into your physical body the frequency and the image of a healthy kidney, your own kidney.
Wow.
And you're fixed. You're done. Okay?
Extraordinary.
And you walk out of there and you got like a new kidney.
Wow. No, that's
because they understand we're all holograms.
Right. So it's a holographic med. Would that be called a holographic med bed then? Is that called a holographic?
There you
med
go.
bed? Yeah.
Wow.
So
Exactly.
when Randy Kramer was on our program, on our 7th GoldFish Report, Steve, he talked about being in the secret space program and
That's
having
right.
the technology to rebuild limbs. They were blown to pieces many times,
Yeah.
according to Randy. Alex, what does that do? You know much about that?
Sounds similar.
Yeah.
I only just met Randy in Yelm a couple months ago for the UFO Fest, and we didn't talk that long because it was very busy. But he's a very interesting man, and certainly has a great deal of knowledge. I have absolutely no problems with what he said, none whatsoever. I've seen the technology work.
Oh,
I've seen it work. At least the ACE technology.
yes.
They said technologically we have all the components here to build a camera. What we don't have is the software.
Ah.
So maybe that's something that's being negotiated. Maybe that's something we already have and it's being held back. I don't know. I haven't visited that with Mornay in several years now. Even talked about the camera.
Well, I think you're right, Alex.
But what's interesting about the camera, let me just finish this.
Please do.
It takes a picture, but at the same time, they have another piece of technology that looks like a donut, but it fits like a yarmulke on your head. Yeah. And what it does is it reads your soul, and it shows you multiple lifetimes.
Wow. That's awesome.
The first time I used it, I couldn't believe it. These monitors came out of the wall, and they weren't there before. They came out of the walls, and I'm looking at all of these scenarios, and I knew it was me. Because every time I'd look at a monitor, I'd see what was going on. I had an emotional response.
Wow.
And I kept going down the line, and one of the last ones that I saw was that I was in the American Revolution, and I was driving a wagon, a team of horses with a wagon carrying supplies and ordinances for George Washington. And cool. The wagon in front of me was driven by John Crockett, the father of Davy Crockett.
Holy cow. That's pretty awesome.
And my very last lifetime before this one, I was in the French Resistance, World War II, fighting the Nazis.
Oh, there you go. Long history of
you're
fighting.
An old soul, Alex, you're an old soul.
Yeah.
Did you see the movie Defending? Did you see the movie Defending Your Life with Meryl Streep and Albert Brooks, where you?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I've kind of.
It's a comedy. It's funny.
Okay. Well, I kind of don't watch anything with Meryl Streep because I really don't care for her political views.
Yeah, this was an old movie. This is before she made those
before she turned satanic.
Before she made her political views known. But the concept of the movie was where when you die, you go to Judgment City and they look back at certain areas of your life. And if you've overcome fear, then you can move on. If you didn't, you have to come back. And the idea of love as well. But while you're there on these trials, right, you go to this place called the Past Lives Pavilion, and you put your hand down and you see who you were. And it's one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie. And this one guy was like this little girl, and then he turned into like some dinner for some, animal or some war, indigenous war chief who was chasing him. It was really funny. I mean, I think it's something you could get a good laugh out of. But the idea of, there's often disclosure in these movies, and the idea of fear and love, and really the whole purpose of our soul growing. And I know that you have, talked about this in your previous interviews about the soul journey. And when it really comes down to it, what are we doing here? So what can you tell us about that?
The A's, they have a very different perspective. When I once asked about, is there a God? They said, yes, absolutely. We call it the isness. We're not exactly sure what it is, other than the fact that it does exist. and we are all a singular part of it. And of course, you know, we all have, there are many different names for the Creator here on earth. Their perspective is that when you cross over, you look at all the places where you made the decision to withhold love. Yeah. That was the most important thing. It had nothing to do with fear, but it had to do where you purposely and made the decision to withhold love from either yourself or someone else. And that you would then have the choice to come back in with those people in order to make a different decision or choice.
Yes.
That's how they looked at it. As far as the soul's journey, apparently there is a process that, regardless of whatever dimension you're on, virtually all souls go through the same process. And I don't actually have that with me because I'm in the car. So, but I can type that out and send it to you if you want, what those levels that the souls go through. And it doesn't matter of the dimension. They may be situationally very different than what we would experience here in third density, but the process apparently is always the same.
Well,
okay, we might want to save that to do the Q&A on YouTube. This way, Alex, viewers can ask. And there's so many things we didn't get to talk about. And I know that our time is, what are we getting to? Oh my goodness, we're going to be wrapping it up in we have about another 10 minutes to wrap this up. There's just so much more we haven't. Steve, let me ask you if you have any, final questions.
Well, we can do another one. We can do another one if you would like.
I'd love to.
There's just so many things we didn't get to talk about. I mean, I wanted to go into a little bit more of the different races that are here and what's going on in Buseki, is it called Buseki or Buseki Mountains? What, the cloning, the, underground bases, all the things that are forbidden, Alex, all the things that get us in trouble.
Yeah, all the things that will get us into trouble. I got you.
Come on, wasn't getting in trouble fun in school. Oh, man.
Yeah. I was so bad in high school that we had a truant officer, Mr. Junta, and he would meet us at IHOP. There was a group of us who were always late and skipping school. He would meet us at IHOP, and then he'd follow us back to school because he knew where we'd go.
Oh my God! Well, in this day and age, they don't let the kids go in my daughter's schools. They're not allowed to go to the bathroom whenever they need to go. And I was furious, of course, when they know I'm calling, it's not going to be good, right? So, I have girls. They have to go to the bathroom when they have to go to the bathroom.
Right.
And they told me it's because the kids are doing things in the bathroom they're not supposed to be doing. And so they're vaping now. They're vaping in the bathroom. That's one of the things. But it turns out it was the boys mostly. And some of them I think of the movie Porky's when I hear this stuff, but some of them were doing things in the soap dispensers that you're not supposed to do. I'll tell you.
Oh my God.
I know. And the kids, oh, Alex, and I mean, it's, the kind of stuff that you would wonder why, whatever. So anyway,
But that's what kids do. They test the boundaries. That's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, but today, the whole Common Core and the really dumbing down of America, that you saw that, I'm sure you saw that KGB defector who talked about the demoralization of America and how literally they'll know that, and I think it was, who was it? One of the defense secretaries, I think, said, we'll know that the brainwashing of America is complete when they, whenever every last American, doesn't know anything, doesn't believe any of the truth or anything like that, when they don't believe it. So this whole brainwashing thing, is also an issue because, they're confusing the kids with this transgender stuff and they're shoving it in our face. The kids are confused and it's really sad to see it that way. And these are all the other things that we have to overcome. It's not that easy. It's really quite a you know, I hope that these other races really understand just how I don't know what to say, inverted. Inverted, is that a good term, Alex? How inverted things became?
Well, it is. It's almost as if our souls have been displaced in our own bodies to keep us completely off balance.
Yes.
It's almost like that. You know, like we're taken out of our soul, our bodies, then put back in at a certain degree where we don't fully line up, and we're out of sync.
Right.
And we can't use our spiritual power. It's almost sort of like that. But you know, it's important to not become overwhelmed, to remain calm, to you know, quote the British, you know, remain calm.
Carry on.
Because we're going to get through this. We are.
Right.
We're definitely going to get through this. Humanity has already made the turn, whether they realize it or not. We have a little bit more of awakening to do, and then we have a lot of cleanup. But that cleanup is going to bring us all together.
Yes.
Because we're all going to share it.
Yeah.
We're all going to share that redistribution of knowledge with each other. And we're going to realize that the manipulation of race, color, and creed has been just that.
Yes.
And, you know, they gave us the full court press because they realized how powerful we were. And they had to make sure that we remained separated from each other.
Yes.
But that's all going to go away. So, you know, the ability is there, the promise is there, the help is there. We just need to step into the process and embrace it. And, you know, I'm actually very, very encouraged that we're going to get there. Again, it may not be in my lifetime, but that's okay. You know,
Right.
I'll come back maybe. I was looking for a vacation. Maybe I won't get one right
A little
now.
vacation first. You'll come back maybe. Everyone heard that maybe.
Yeah.
Well, that's the good question. I mean, you did talk about when, you know, on a previous interview, how you do have a choice when you die not to re-enter the reincarnation cycle, which we'll have to wait for the next interview because we're really out of time.
We're out of time,
and, you know, I really,
Okay.
Steve, do you have any final questions for Alex? Because I know that we're winding down.
Yeah, one of the things, one phrase, and you'll know exactly where it's come from, Alex. It's stayed with me for years, and I think humanity could use this as a term that will bring us all forward, is the love you withhold is the pain that you carry. It's so
lifetime after lifetime.
Yes, it's profound, and if we all allow our natural humanity, our lovingness to come forward in our own circle of family, friends, in our circle of the city we live in or the town we live in, to the country we live in, to the planet we live in, the whole place will be transformed within moments. So I think if everybody had that motto, I think if humanity were to aim for something, that phrase, because I believe humanity is basically loving, is of a loving nature. I am also very positive for humanity. So if we all had that motto, things would change instantly. That's all I have to say.
And you're absolutely right, Steve. I mean, humanity forever has been the underdog. Yes. And we've all shared that space, that underdog status, you know?
Yep.
And that's why, you know, we're so compassionate with each other because we get it. You know, we've all been there and are there.
Yeah.
So when things are bad, you know, everybody comes together.
Yeah.
You know, they pull together and they make it work and figure it out, and they open their hearts and their homes and they do whatever is necessary.
That's right.
You know, we are those beings. It's just getting all the other bullshit out of the way.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. They have PhDs in deception. They masterfully divided us and figured a way to fight each other, figured a way to see
play on our goodness too.
Absolutely. I agree with both of you. I think like the Charlie Chaplin message to humanity couldn't be more appropriate than at this time right now, because humans want to, you know, celebrate your joys with each other. We want to love each other. We are our brothers and sisters, regardless of your color and your race. And I don't know that, you know, we didn't know we were being brainwashed and divided. And now that we know that, we can't let that happen anymore. So, but wouldn't you agree that it's the one way, the one thing that everybody can do is look within themselves? It's like the Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror. I mean, you have to start. You have to start with yourself. Is that the best advice you could give people?
To thine own self be true, and to know thyself.
Yes.
Absolutely. And not only the A's, but other groups that they've associated with, that I have seen it at different times in different places with them. When they look at this planet, they only see one humanity, one family. Mm-hmm. They don't see color. They don't see round eye or olive eye. They don't see any of that. They just see one humanity, one family.
Yes.
And, we're the only ones who don't see that.
We don't see it yet.
Well,
not yet.
Some of us don't. Look, there's definitely some of us that are more advanced on this planet than others. And sometimes, Alex, like yourself, it's quite a burden to see it, because look how long you've been waiting, how long you've known this information, what a burden it's been, in a sense, to carry it and know that people are, you're like the black sheep,
Yeah, I've been treated like a redheaded stepchild. I get that.
So, but the good news is, that's the whole point of the GoldFish Report, to get this information out and spread it. And I can only ask the viewers, share this. You can copy it, bootleg it. It's never been about money on the GoldFish Report. That's not to say we can't we don't need the, we wouldn't appreciate the help and support of paying the bills to make it happen. But look, 400 reports. This is our 400th report. And Alex, I just want to thank you so much for being with us today and celebrating this 400th report with this kind of report, because this is the dawn of a new age. I think we're really draining the swamp. The president's doing that. The team behind the president's doing that. And we have come a long way. Do you think we're ready for contact, like a little bit more openly? What do you think?
I think some people are and some aren't. I still think that there's a lot of people who, on a religious level, will be extremely fearful. Right. It may take a little bit longer, but then again, you just never know. We're in that place where just about anything can happen. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that whatever does happen is done to move humanity along, to get us to wake up maybe faster, to become more integrated, to ask more questions, to join humanity more together in a common cause. I would say maybe 30% of the world's population could actually handle that now. I think there's probably a percentage that would be completely indifferent one way or the other. They just don't give a shit. But then you have your deeply religious beings who would be fearful because they would feel like they didn't have any control. And, the church, they've done so much to harm and cripple humanity. It's just,
Indeed. But do you think?
But we got to get past all that. We just got to move all past that stuff. There's no point harping on it any longer.
Right. It sounds like you're making a prediction, though. Are you making a prediction, Alex, of an event that's going to unite humanity?
No, not officially.
Not officially. Okay, folks, we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. So read between the lines, folks, okay? Alex, what a pleasure. Thank you so much, Steve. Thanks for, being here and ushering in this 400th report with me. Steve is
likewise,
here doing so many reports.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Louise.
And we will have Alex, would you come back and do this again, Alex?
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
Wonderful. And folks, remember, we're going to be doing a special Q&A section with Alex live on YouTube, and I have to monetize the channel and everything to do this because it's going to be super chat donations. So whatever donations you want to make to, well, we may have a set amount. I'll announce this at a later time in the future. We haven't decided a date yet, but if you want to talk to Alex and ask a question, or at least through Super Chat Live, you know, doing the chat, the live chatting, you can do that, and Alex will answer your question. Because this is opening a can of worms for a lot of people. A lot of people have a lot more questions about this, and I think it's a great way to help support getting this information out. And like I said, please share this far and wide. And I want to thank all of our viewers for being there. All these, you know, we've been doing this 4.5 years now. So we appreciate all of our viewers and subscribers. As you know, our original YouTube channel was deleted and never restored. So we lost those millions of views in our first 200 reports. But one day we're going to have that all restored. And you know, follow us on Facebook. We have our 24/7 news page there, and also on Twitter. So you can get all that information at thegoldfishreport.com, folks. Just spread the information and let's wake people up, but do it with love. And again, Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Yep.
And
you're welcome. It's been an honor and a privilege.
Thanks so much. And this concludes this edition of the Goldfish Report.